What's up, vinyl community? Have a little bit of fun with this. Wanted to do a discography of Suicidal Tendencies and just kind of get into it. I got a lot of extra video and pictures that I took to make the video better. Suicidal Tendencies, you know, like by today's standards, it's really not a shocking name, but back then it was pretty shocking, and I'm sure many moms were throwing away the tapes left and right if they were discovered in their kids' rooms. Got started back in the early 80s, and they've been around for 35 years except for maybe one or two hiatuses. But most exciting for me are the late 80s and early 90s thrashier metal albums. But if you look back at the beginning, they're right there in LA as bands from the Bay Area and the local scene are taking their influence of punk, new wobble, and just started cranking up the speed. Suicidal started out as punk, but started crossing over by adding guitars and guitar melodies and solos. But what attracted me to Suicidal, and still to this day, is the attitude from album to album and leadership of Mike Muir. I've never seen any evidence that Mike doesn't back up his words with his actions, and he's always maintained a message of empowerment, and I'll give my best. I'll do my best to give you an example of that at the end of the video. There's been a lot of lineup changes in the band, and I'm not even aware of all the lineup changes. I just know some of my favorite members, of course, are Mike Muir, Rocky George on guitars when he came in and started getting crazy on the guitars. Also Rob Trujillo, and of course Mike Clark, who has been in the band forever. But want to get started here with 1983's self-titled release. This is an original. It has a really cool insert. I picked up this copy about 4 years ago at Used Kids Records. Been looking for it for a while. Walked up the stairs and was already starting to hear this album play, and it got louder as I walked up the stairs at Used Kids Records. And as soon as I walked up to the counter, I said, "I'll take that. Is that for sale?" And picked it up immediately. A couple years later, I picked up another copy and was able to get an original insert for it. And check this out too. Some fan went and typed up all the lyrics. Maybe somebody didn't have the original insert, but they took the time to type up all the lyrics, and I thought that was pretty cool and like to keep that with the album. This was released on Caroline, and you see the album cover, and you start to see the relation with skate punk and skate community. And I'm not sure about V12 or any kind of association with gangs and things like that in LA, but as far as I can tell, it's just a very small part, if at all, with Mike Muir in the band. They don't release another album for like 4 years, which is crazy. But in the meantime, Mike Muir starts up his own record label, which I thought was really cool and interesting, especially since it's 1985. So Mike Muir starts Suicidal Records, and they have this release here, Venice, Welcome to Venice. This thing is really cool. I only just picked it up this year and had only heard bits and pieces of it, and I can tell you this is a really good album, especially in the vein, I mean, it's still in the vein of the first album, but it seems more like an early thrash album than it does an early hardcore punk album, even though it's certainly punk. But very cool release. Love the artwork on it, which is done in pencil. I mean, I don't think it's photography. I think somebody's hand-drawn this. I can't tell. But just an excellent release. This was only released on record and cassette. Don't expect the CD release anytime soon because the masters were burned in a fire. Very cool. Right before Join the Army came out, they released Possessed to Skate. I remember the first time I even heard Suicidal Tendencies, I was probably about 9 or 10, so it was a year or two after the first album came out. Neighborhood friend came over and said, "You got to hear this. Come and check this out." And I remember sitting on the sewer, like the water drain sewer, and he had a little tape player and he had it queued up to "I Saw Your Mommy," and I just thought, this is hilarious stuff. And about that time, they released the video for Institutionalized, which was on the first album, but Rocky George ends up being joining the band later and is in the video. But we would always sit around waiting, like if it was a rainy weekend or whatever. He had MTV, we didn't have cable. So I'd always sit around over at his place trying to catch videos on MTV, and one of the ones we would wait for is the Pepsi song, right? So Institutionalized was a great song, and then when Possessed to Skate came out, it was super exciting because they had torn this whole house apart and they were skateboarding in it. It was like, how cool is that? And this album actually comes with the poster that you see hanging up behind me. And I just love skating and skate culture. I'm not a skateboarder myself, but I was always in and around and hanging out with the guys. I did the BMX bike thing, but we were always building ramps and playing this kind of music. while we were hanging out when we could, when somebody brought a radio along. It was either that or 80s music. But we'd always get real excited when somebody would play something cool like some Suicidal. But good times. So what is this? 1987, joined the Army, came out on Caroline, and then soon after that I think they get signed to Epic. Fantastic album, still kind of in the skate punk metal theme, but just great tracks on here. Join the Army, War Inside My Head, and starts to hint, and really they had the template of Suicidal. Really starts with Join the Army, I think, and then they just kind of build on that, and then they make some transitions through the upcoming albums. But Rocky George's guitar is all over this thing. I mean, jump in the mosh pit and go crazy. So excellent album, and I don't think copies, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if copies of the poster came out with that album too. I thought they came out with the Possessed Escape. Awesome. Next up, I got a mint original condition. I got a mint copy original with the hype sticker on the front there. I kind of like that. And this is on Epic. This is where they get a lot heavier. They almost shed completely the punk thing. Mike Muir's vocals on this are outstanding. The songs on this thing are killer. How Will I Laugh Tomorrow. Tripping the Brain, of course, is just a killer Suicidal Tendencies track. And then on the B side of this was a little bit different song, Suicidal Mania. And take a look at the tracks on this thing. It's just awesome. How I Laugh Tomorrow, Tripping the Brain, Hearing Voices, just Sorry If I Don't Wake Up. This is just a killer album, and glad to have an original on that. Sounds fantastic. Alright, next up, 1989, Controlled by Hate. This is kind of confusing. It was released as a double EP, so I don't know if it's just kind of a joke or what. But the album artwork and the rear sleeve kind of has the bandana theme going on, and it looks like somebody's drawn this in their notebook at high school. So pretty cool artwork, and another great album. I mean, 7 new tracks, including unreleased versions of How I Laugh, which I think the last track is kind of an acoustic version, which I think is pretty interesting. But another solid, heavy album to close out the 90s. And this is where a lot of the fans start to drop off. But I was just getting warmed up. Enter Rob Trujillo here for Lights Camera Revolution. This is an original album that I found sealed and opened it and listened to it. Still trying to keep the hype sticker on the front there. Love this album. Love to revisit this album. And it still holds up today, I think. You Can't Bring Me Down, Alone. I Don't Care for Lovely. It was really funny then, but now I could skip that track. Give It Revolution, Get Whacked, Send Me Your Money. I'd probably skip that track. This goes out, Murder's End's kind of funny, and then it closes out with Going Breakdown. Awesome album. Had this on tape and wore the tape out. So yeah, I show more than vinyl sometimes. Not very often, but sometimes. And speaking of tapes, their next album, again, probably lost a few more fans. But I listened to this tape even more than I did Lights Camera Revolution. This is Art of Rebellion. This is a reissue I picked up. I can not find an original to save my life. But oh my gosh, this album. And I think I don't love it for everything that's cool about the thrashier albums, or you enter Rob Trujillo, which the bass on Revolution is not as loud. It's more blended. But when you come here, you start to hear the bass being more pronounced in the production. But I just love the attitude. When this came out, I'm right at that right age. I think I'm like a freshman in high school. I was all about rebellion. So this was just right up my alley at the time. But I think despite all the other great stuff going on in those albums, I just know this album backwards and forwards, every note, probably more than the other one. So this is a really good one to play back. Nobody Hears, one of my favorite tracks on it, that I used to just go nuts on. But just a fun album from beginning to end. Still keeping up with the humor. I think I forgot to mention that earlier too. There's a lot of humor mixed into the music. But like this one, Gotta Kill Captain Stupid. But awesome album. Wore the tape out. Next one up. This is a compilation album. Still Cyco after all these years. And again on cassette. Don't have that on CD. And awesome album. In the fact that they re-recorded everything. They got Rob Trujillo on bass, re-recorded all their songs from the first album. That's why you kind of see the close-up. reminiscent of the jungle gym thing in the background there. So, but they also added the B-side to "Trippin' the Brain." I think there's another track on here that wasn't on another album. But so basically a remake, but it's a good thing they did because that sold like crazy, and a lot of people were into it. So I got to do something I don't normally do and jump over to the CDs. Next album, really good album. They slow things down. The tempo slows down a little bit. Man, the production on the guitars is heavier. It's thicker. And a lot of people that like Suicidal are really tuning out at this point, including myself, where I'm just kind of setting the CD down and moving on to other things. But I do like this album, and I actually like it better now than I remember liking it then. One of my favorite tracks right here to revisit is number 7, "What Else Could I Do?" But I know this album, for those that were new to Suicidal at this time, they just love it. And yeah, Rob Trujillo is still with the band at that time. Fast forward to 1999. This is Freedumb, and this is Rob Trujillo's last album with the band. And then you start to see some different lineup changes here going in with Freedumb. These start to become released on his own label, Suicidal Records. And this CD and the next one in 2000, Free Your Soul, Save My Mind. They start out actually pretty good. I like to listen to the first few tracks, and then I kind of lose the CDs. Kind of lose attention. I lose attention after the first few tracks. But still, good, solid albums. I'm glad I went back and picked these up and to add to the collection, so I could at least have the discography, even though I won't revisit those too much. What do we got next? Okay, the first time I started picking back up on Suicidal was when 13 came out. I heard that they were going to do 13 in 2013. About this time, I'm heavily into collecting vinyl. Can't wait for release, because vinyl is what got me going back and listening to a lot of the stuff that had been sitting collecting dust on my mental shelf, because I sure didn't have the stuff. I got rid of it all like everybody else did. But I'm really excited about this release, and it really did deliver. When I got this album, I was like, yes, this is awesome. It quickly wore off, where it's not really my favorite album. Just glad to have Suicidal back with a new release. Glad to have this one in the collection. And then last up, we have 2016 World Gone Mad. This is a double LP on blue vinyl. Clap Like Ozzy. I mean, you could really easily go back and check out Vinyl Community videos that do reviews. I'm not really good at doing album reviews, but Living for Life, I like that one. World Gone Mad. Living for Life, I think Lombardo does some great drums on it. Some really nice blue vinyl there. So World Gone Mad, 2016, awesome album. Enter Dave Lombardo, exit Dave Lombardo. He went on to leave ST and go with Dead Cross, I believe, with Mike Patton. But I have no doubt that Mike Muir is going to continue to deliver quality albums and continue to tour live. I haven't got to see ST live yet, but Mike Muir always has a message of empowerment and is always finding ways to turn negative into positive. So to leave you in this video, I have some Mike Muir inspired words to leave you with. You know, I have people come up to me and they tell me they're unhappy, you know, and I say, if you're unhappy, why don't you do something about it? And they say, well, how do I do that? I said, I don't know, but you got to find yourself. You got to look deep inside yourself and find something that moves you. If it moves you, it's worth fighting for. For me, it's all about the music, you know. Always believe in yourself, because no one else will. And never give up. And you can't look back in the past, because if you look back in the past, you're going to find that person that was unhappy. You don't want to pick them back up. The past is history. The future is a mystery. Today is a gift. That's why they call it the present. SP. The past is history. The future is a mystery. Oh man, so close. Future is a gift. That's why they call it the president. The president. The past is a mystery.